it feels like it's about to snow. It feels so cold
Looks
out
like
here.
it too, but I don't think it's quite cold enough. But
no, it's not, and we shouldn't complain because it's actually not that bad.
For middle of November. And speaking of middle of November, we are actually in the garden about to harvest some stuff. Today we're harvesting our Detroit red beets because I think it's time. They've been in here long enough.
They're huge, some of them. And basically, we really haven't harvested them because we haven't needed them. We still have...
We've eaten a couple, but
yeah,
not many.
we've eaten a few over the season, but basically we still had some in the freezer from last year, and I still had tons of pickled beets canned from last year, so they kind of went on the back burner, but it's getting to the point now, it's so cold at nights, we're worried that they might not do so well. Plus, we're losing the green tops, which are feed for animals, so... yeah.
So that's what we're up to. So we actually have these Detroit red beets in 2 different spots. We've got a few in ground, and then we have these ones that we actually grew in a blue barrel. We're going to start with these ones because we're pretty sure these are smaller, and all of these are basically going to get packaged up for storage for the winters. These are actually looking pretty good. There's quite a few nice greens on them. We might eat a few, but I think because we're harvesting this all at once, just because we're getting late, a lot of these are probably going to go to the rabbits.
Us getting late? Never!
But yeah, a lot of these are probably going to go to the rabbits, and that's fine because it's a good food for them. So I'm going to see if I can get in here and find a beet.
They look beautiful.
They do look pretty good. So these ones I think are going to be the better size
For keeping for us.
So this will be our first year sort of trying to store the beets for the winter, and one thing that we had read, because we're always learning too, is you want to, if you're going to store, cut them kind of, I'm terrible at judging it, but about 2 inches sort of above. So
he's going about 3 inches.
All right. So
there you go.
2. And there we go. So then that will be what we store. But this is only the first one, so we're going to see what we end up with here.
And the other thing too, I'm going to suggest, I think we need to do some research on this because it does say to leave the top, but I wonder if you have to dry it before you store it because all those greens are going to rot.
Well, we're gonna find out. But this is all we're doing for the moment.
So we are approaching the halfway point on our bucket here.
Looking pretty good so far.
So far, we've gotten some beautiful beets out of here. Now, these were planted quite a bit later.
Yes.
Than what we had in the garden. But super impressed from this one little round bucket. I think we're definitely learning a few things that are going to work really well in these buckets for next year, and a few things that we're probably just going to ditch doing in the raised beds and buckets in future. One thing was, if you go back to our sweet potato video, that harvest, the buckets produced amazing sweet potatoes. So that's something we're going to visit. And we're seeing gorgeous, really nice put together beets from here. So that's another thing that we're definitely going to try and keep going with in these buckets, I think.
There we are. The blue barrel, the half blue barrel, is completely cleaned out. You can see there's the greens that we got off them. Now, like I say, I'm going to put a percentage of these off to the side, but we are going to feed most of these to the rabbits right now. But in the future, we are kind of at this point where we're kind of trying to make the decision whether we just grow beets or we keep growing Swiss chard, because basically Swiss chard and beets are the same thing botanically. And for purposes of keeping things simple, i.e. the crossing, because obviously sugar beets and Swiss chard and Detroit red beets all have very different production qualities, so we got to think about that. But for right now, here's our harvest out of that barrel, which was pretty good actually, if I do say so myself. That's a decent amount of beets. And we still have over there on the other side of the chickens that patch of Detroit reds to harvest and see how they did. So these Detroit reds are a lot bigger, but they've been in the ground a lot longer, so it'll be interesting to see what actually comes out of here as far as number of beets. Now the other thing, you can see we had another little row here. This row actually did extend all the way up there, but then remembering back to earlier this year, the apple tree fell on the chicken coop and kind of shaded them out. Half that row really didn't grow, but that's okay. We're going to still harvest these and see what we get.
But that's my hand. They're huge.
That's a big beet. I'm curious. That's probably going to be a bit woody.
But for animal feed, it's going to be just fine. And that's one of the things that we're kind of thinking with these ones that we planted in the ground that have been in here all summer, is some of those smaller ones are going to get into the bucket here for us to eat inside, but some of them are going to be saved for animal feed for the bunnies in the wintertime when they really want to eat it.
There's not that many, but...
Not many, but you know what? We might expand on this next year. We'll see.
So here's one of the Detroit red beets we just pulled out. Keeping in mind, these have been in the ground for quite a while, but that's a massive, massive beet. And with the decision recently to not have the pigs, we're still very interested in growing beet root crops, I'm going to call it that, to feed animals, because they're still a decent and they're an easy root crop to grow to feed animals. So the thing that we're going to be toying with in the near future is, are we better to grow something like these Detroit Reds in a much larger volume, because that's still a lot of food for rabbits, for example, but they're also something that we can eat? Or are we better to grow the mangles, which, yes, we can eat them, but they're not as nice as far as from an edible perspective.
They're more known as an animal fodder crop.
An animal fodder, yeah, because of their large size. So this is kind of a stay tuned moment, because when we can grow beets like this, it does beg the question, should we just stick to the Detroit Reds and the sugar beets, or yeah, how to make this work as simple as possible?
And I would say that's not our biggest one in here.
I don't think so, no.
The girls have been in here happily cleaning up, looking for bugs, looking for worms.
Well, we got everything out except for one, which happens to be, I think, our biggest one. So I'm going to pull it out and take a look at it. Here it is. This is a big, that's a big beet. And this is one thing we were saying, like these red beets, these Detroit red beets, kind of as we've been harvesting, we've pretty much made the decision that we're probably going to keep growing these, because you still get the edible tops, although we're not collecting them all this year. You get an edible root, but if some of them are big, you've got livestock fodder. And because we do the fiber stuff, you've also got something that gives you a dye, right? This gives you a red dye. So these become very multi-purpose. So we're probably going to grow these as our main thing, although also, as we were saying, we have literally thousands of the giant red mango
Seeds already.
So we're going to give them a try next year. That was something we didn't get in the ground. But I'm going to go ahead and prune this one up. We'll show you what we got for Detroit Reds, and then I'm going to, kind of as a sneak peek, because we're not doing this today, I'm going to pull out one sugar beet to sort of show you the difference between these Detroit Reds and the sugar beets. Well, there they are. So that's our Detroit Red beet harvest, and like we said, we kind of neglected these. We did 2 plantings, and realistically we didn't plant as many as we probably should have, but this is still a lot of beets to feed us. And beets are something that we do eat, but we're going to try, because it grows so well for us, we're going to try to find more ways to cook these in the near future. Of course, one of the benefits to beets.
Rabbit food.
Yes.
So we're going to see what Fern thinks of some beet tops. Hi girl, you ready? Oh, I think she approves.
Yep, looks like it. They usually do, which is pretty good.
We will give her a little bit more than that, but she's got some pellets still, so she's good. Yes, rabbit approved.
It's raining, and it's end of November, so it's pretty much time for us to head in here shortly. But I wanted to pull out one sugar beet to sort of show you the difference between them and the Detroit Reds, because I think more people are familiar with the Detroit Reds than they are with the sugar beets. Botanically, they're the same thing. They're the same species, which is the whole thing about choosing wisely so that things don't cross. So this bucket here is a bit younger than what we had in the ground, but we definitely found on the beet side of things, these blue barrels do amazing. I think they keep enough moisture in but still drain that they do well. So I'm going to pull one out here, kind of out from the front. And like I say, keep in mind, they get bigger than this. But still.
Oh, you got a little one there too, but that's okay.
I got 2 by accident. This is not the biggest sugar beet in the world, but you can see the sugar beets are more or less like it's almost more like a tap root than a big bulbous root. And they look a little, I would almost say like primitive. but they are packed with sugar. So another thing about beets, which is kind of interesting, is obviously I pulled this beet out, the sugar beet, and I got this little guy. And what basically happens with beets is when you plant the seed, you're actually planting a cluster of seeds. So you'll often get multiples come up together, and sometimes they amount to a good size, and sometimes they don't. So in the future, we're going to try our hardest to sort of thin some of them out a little bit and give the bigger ones a bit more of a chance. But still, that's we do like having these sugar beets.
Well, and the nice thing about that is it's, again, another look at the fodder greens on that for animals, since like that's beyond what we're going to eat. But great fodder for bunnies or sheep or anything. Everything loves the sugar beets.
Mm-hmm. I'll show a little bit of a difference here between the Detroit Reds and the sugar beets. Again, this is not necessarily the best example. Very similar, but they do grow a little different. Like I say, these almost grow more like a taproot.
Yeah.
This one, of course, is multiple branched, whereas these are more of like an improved lumpy bit.
Well, the nice thing is we will improve the sugar beets as we
Over
select
time,
our
when
own
you select
seeds.
the best ones. This would not be one I would probably keep from a seed saving perspective.